Hello, everybody. My name is John Rose Adams. I work at the University of York on a long-running project called XR Stories, and also on a project called XR Network Plus. And it's under that project that we're here with you today. We've been running the seminar series for a couple of years now. And today we are really, really excited to welcome two of the XR Network Plus funded projects, both exploring in different ways live performance. We've got colleagues from Abertay and the Scottish Youth Theatre presenting their project, and at Goldsmiths, University of London, and Alexander Whitley Dance Company presenting their project. But very first, a couple of words on XR Network Plus. So it is a full name, XR Network Plus, virtual production in the digital economy. It's funded by the EPSRC, the Engineering and Physical Sciences Research Council, and it has an objective to try and form and shape a long-term research agenda for virtual production for the UK. It's led by the University of York in collaboration with the University of Edinburgh, University of the Arts London, Cardiff University, and Ulster University. And if you've been to one of our seminars or webinars before, it's all about presenting short, snappy summaries of some of the projects and some of the work, and then taking every opportunity to discuss those findings with you, the audience. So we'll take each project in turn. They're going to be about 10, 15 minutes each for the projects, and then we'll open up for discussion and questions with you all. Please make use of the Q&A box that you'll find somewhere on your screen. And I do ask questions as you think of them. We'll hoover them all up at the end, but sometimes if you've got a question, just fire it as you think about it. Yeah, we'll go and we'll do that. Okay, so without further ado, I'm first going to we're going to dive into a project that's formed like a project titled Chismic Play. It's a collaboration between Abertay University and Scottish Youth Theatre, and they've been experimenting with biometric sensors and feedback, exploring what that means for live storytelling. So I'm going to hand over to Naaman and Jamie, and I'm going to stop sharing so you can start.
Thanks very much, John, and thanks very much for having us present today. I realise it will probably be quite a whirlwind stop of the project, but we'll do our best. So yeah, I'm Jamie Steedman. I'm digital media producer with Scottish Youth Theatre.
Hi, I'm Naman Merchant. I'm a lecturer at Abertay University, and I'm also a co-lead on this project.
So we'll be talking about Chismic Play, which is the performance outcome of a longer collaborative R&D project between Abertay University and Scottish Youth Theatre that merges live theatre, virtual production, and cutting-edge haptic technology. So we've been using full-body Tesla suits and different custom-built haptic devices in the project, which explored how these haptic sensations may actually enhance audience experiences during live performance. Haptic technology such as the Tesla suits we were using isn't particularly new technology. Since its development, the Tesla suits specifically have been used in simulations and for different training purposes, such as high voltage electrical safety training, fire service drills, and simulators to experience what it feels like doing a lap in a Formula One car. But as far as we know, they haven't been so far used in a live performance context before. So we wanted to see how these haptic sensations, alongside your more traditional mediums such as sound, lighting, movement, etc., can make audiences feel more connected to one another, to the performers in the space as well, and to become more than just that kind of passive spectator of what they're experiencing. So this was broken down into various test and research days late last year and early this year. A full development week in April where we rehearsed the performance and invited focus groups to feedback about their experiences, which we'll talk a wee bit more about later. And then also the final sharing day of our findings with multiple performances and Q&As, which was last week. So here's a short film to show you what we got up to.
Thank you very much for that trailer, Jamie. That was fantastic. It showed a good idea of what the technologies that we used were. So I'll talk a bit more about what the technologies were, and we broke this down basically into 3 different sections. Our performance was broken into 3 sections, which were very distinct, and each section was making use of a specific part of the technology in isolation. So we have the Tesla suits that were used throughout the 3 different sections of the performance. But the more interesting bit that I thought was the live music part of it, which was the guitar side of things, where the guitar brought agency to the performers and the actors, and they could then play basically a simple note. And we pick up the frequency and the amplitude from the guitar, and using that, we would then drive different things in what's happening in the performance. So we'll drive some visual effects inside the screen. We'll also drive how the haptics would then react to how the guitar will be playing. And there'll be different intensities, different frequencies affecting different parts of how the Tesla suits would react. And also, we created these basic devices. We created these haptic custom devices that helped to basically narrate this in a more different way. I'll talk a bit more about these devices in a bit, but the idea is that we had everything powered together with Unreal Engine, and that was driving these different technologies together. So it would send TCP packets to Tesla suits, send TCP packets to the custom devices. It also would drive the virtual production screen and the lighting rig that we had, which was all running simultaneously, and all was powered by Unreal Engine. So we were also using the Tesla suits very proficiently in this. The Tesla suits a bit hard to explain what they are actually giving to the user, because the best explanation I found was if you've ever seen those ab devices that came on in 2017, those ab simulators, which would eventually feel like a bunch of electrodes on your abdomen, but think of that all over your body. So 68 different haptic electrodes all across your body, and we have minute control over each of them, and we would create haptic animations which would then be triggered in different forms using either the guitar or motion capture. So the motion capture was quite interesting too, because the third part of our motion capture scene would just be the movement of and intensities of movement for the actors would then drive how the intensity of the haptics would then be delivered to either the Tesla suits or the custom haptic devices that we created. Now, in spite of their immense benefits, the Tesla suits have some limitations that we identified. They were not wearable for users with medical conditions, for example, pacemakers, or just a screw in a part of their body would then disrupt the way the suits would be used, so they were not allowed to use those. Similarly, we required direct contact to the skin with the Tesla suits, which does bring some intrusiveness, and they are not always size inclusive, so there wasn't everyone who can fit in all of the suits that we had. And we had 4 suits, so there were a range of sizes that we had, but still did not include a lot of people in there. And finally, the most important bit was the cost. Each suit would cost around £15,000, which was quite a large sum to think about expanding this in a live performance for the audience's kind of approach. So what we want to do is we created these custom haptic devices that we built on, which were driven with the same kind of technology that drives the suits, which is ESP32s. So looking at this, we have basically a 3D printed hemisphere with the idea being that we can buy these smaller electronics in quite a low cost and put this together. If you have a simple 3D printer, we can put this up on a blog or a website. We can publish this eventually and look at how we can use 4 different vibration actuators that can be used to drive the audio. And we're using vibration actuators, which are a little different from vibration motors because they use the basically waveform of an audio file, and then they replicate that using the waveform, which is what we've mimicked over here using these tiny electronics called MOSFETs, which then drive all of. So they're not getting too much into the detail. These basically are driven the similar way as the Tesla suits and are a lot cheaper to build up. Yep.
So one of the real strengths of the project, looking at all these different elements that Naman has already mentioned, was the project team itself, bringing together practitioners of all different disciplines who each brought their own unique perspectives to what we were doing and what we were researching. So whether that was Leone as the lead artist devising a structure that enabled 4 slightly different experiments, and depending on what we were researching, to seamlessly weave together throughout the performance. The performers themselves, who constantly evaluated what certain stimuli did for how they moved in the space. The technologists who examined and figured out the actual practical applications of what we were dreaming with the VP screen, with the avatars, and with the different haptic simulations. or the researchers who led the focus groups and created these different dynamic, stimulating ways for audiences to feed back about their experiences during the performance. Each voice in the team contributed to how the project was shaped and like everything that we learned therefore from it. But naturally, this communication also came with its own slight nuances as well, which Naman will explain a wee bit more about.
So what we found very initially on was that it's very difficult to explain what a sense of touch would bring across with the Tesla suits or even the haptic devices, and how do we then like communicate that within the team. So we found out very early on that we can't really use basic words to explain that very easily because they're not the same, they don't communicate the same way. But we found the metaphors work very well. So there was a point where I wanted to talk about the creepiness of this of some part of the suit that's coming up, and I just thought it's more like a spider crawling over my skin, and that's eventually the kind of metaphors we were looking for. And we created these. We had 3 performances over the rehearsal week where we had the audience members, around 12 of them, come in, and then eventually they get, after the performance, they had an hour of a focus group where we asked them to give us some drawings, very structured approach of seeing if they can give us some drawings, some journaling, and a few metaphors of how they would what they got out of the performance, and trying to get some more qualitative data, which we then created. But the reason for that is because there's not yet a common language to describe haptic sensations. Drawing on drawing on the subjectivity of each person was a lot more important for us, and we used a multimodal approach to capture the sensory, emotional, and non-verbal dimensions of what the experience were for each user that came through.
And as well as developing this haptic language, one of our early discoveries on the project was, as Naman's already mentioned, how many restrictions the Tesla suits themselves had, and how this created even more barriers to accessing the performance than we would have liked, hence why we started to develop those custom-built haptic devices. But from this, we wanted to start to distinguish different levels of haptic sensations that people may experience depending on what they were doing in the performance. So you had the immediate full body haptics from the Tesla suits, which is a more intense and kind of comprehensive sensation across the body. You had wearable haptics, so that's such as like a cushion that people would be hugging, that you basically used these haptic spheres that were embedded inside them. And we also had environmental haptics, so that might have been a beanbag to sit on or a foam mat to sit or lay on that did something similar to that the cushion did. And overall, these alternative devices were a lot less restrictive and exposing than standing in a skin-tight suit, essentially. It meant anyone could use them. They're a lot more portable, and they're actually a more creative type of technology that it can be applied to lots of different objects or materials that lends itself to the world or the environment that you're trying to build and immerse audiences in during the performance. You know, these Tesla suits, they look very sci-fi and they have a very particular aesthetic, which can often be distracting from the kind of theatre world that you're trying to immerse them in. So, but alongside that, the focus groups that we did do in April that Naman's mentioned, it was also really interesting to receive more feedback from audience members that were wearing the Tesla suits and also using the alternative devices last week during our performance sharings. Some of them commented saying that they instantly felt more connected to the performers. They were more immersed in the environment and more involved in the performance. Someone said that it helped make them more present in their own body and the space when they were trying to figure out their relationship with the screen, the performers, and the different virtual elements that were going on. And one person also raised the question about how this technology can almost act as a second skin in theatre context, which we thought was really interesting. Ultimately, we'd love to develop these alternatives further and to find a way that haptics can be embedded in larger set designs, such as a sculptural floor piece that people can sit or lay on and experience different haptic sensations depending on what they do or how they respond to it. And ultimately, we think that's a more interesting, democratic and affordable way to apply the technology as well. Yeah, I realised that was obviously very quick, trying to encompass all that we've learned throughout the project. But if you have any questions, you can reach both Naman and myself on these emails, or we look forward to having any questions you might have as well. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you both. I know it's a tricky thing to stick within a small period of time, but you did a wonderful job there. Thank you very much. And yeah, there's already some questions coming in. We'll loop back to those at the end. So yeah, thank you very much. Stay on the line though, because there'll be some good chat at the end of this.
Perfect.
So next, if I can welcome, I was going to say to the stage, to the screen, Dan Strutt from Goldsmiths and Alexander Whitley from Alexander Whitley Dance Company, who are going to share their project. I'm going to hand it over to you both. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Hopefully you can see that.
It's quite a chunky title.
Yeah.
But we're talking roughly about virtual production tools within, developed within a dance choreographic context. We picked up on terms like the metaverse and various different projects because this is very much in kind of a collaborative within this shared virtual space. You'll see Fenice along with our own logos there. Alexander Whitley Dance Company, he's a developer who's worked very closely with the project, so it's worth giving him a call out. So let's go to the next slide. So yeah, I'm Dr. Daniel Strutt, and it's worth pointing out that this is a really sort of programming, coding heavy project, but I'm a philosopher. I'm a media philosopher at the heart of it. I'm thinking about these kind of modalities of experience, of presence and touch and synesthesia, and about sort of creating new forms of or exploring new forms of experience in virtual spaces through the new devices that are emerging onto the market. So yeah, when I write about this, it's at quite a philosophical level, but then working with dancers is great because they kind of understand that sort of language of virtual expression in shared virtual environments and stuff like that. So it's a good collaboration. It works well.
Indeed. Yes, and I'm Alexander Whitley. I'm choreographer and artistic director of Alexander Whitley Dance Company. We've been working at the intersection of dance and digital technology for over a decade now, working with a range of different cultural institutions and academic partners to explore and research the possibilities around new forms of performance and movement-based experiences.
So we've been working together since about 2020, and the research emerged during the lockdown through AHRC funding. But then we moved into a more direct period of collaboration through a British Academy Innovation Fellowship, this is images from the British Academy Summer Showcase last year. And then alongside that, we went for the first XR Network Prototyping Impact and Acceleration Fund. And we've been around the world to LA, SIGGRAPH, and South by Southwest, showing the various outputs of this. So let's move on.
So yeah, Otmo is a movement creation platform that we've been developing alongside this research, and has provided a kind of market-facing outcome of a lot of the research we've been exploring in this project. So in simple terms, it's a virtual production tool aimed specifically at dance and looking at making the sequencing and editing of motion capture content more accessible for people working in the dance sector. So this is something we've been developing for some time, and we have a beta version that we released last year that's being steadily developed on as we explore more around these kind of other research opportunities. But yeah, there are a few different variations on the tool that we've been developing. As I was saying, primarily the kind of public-facing or market-facing side of it is this desktop app. But alongside that, we've been developing Otmo Live, which is a virtual production tool we've been iterating on in a series of different live performance contexts. And then, as Dan alluded to before, we developed an experimental VR version of the tool that we showed at SIGGRAPH a few years ago. And yeah, over to Mocap Streamer.
Yeah, so within the same framework of sort of user-friendly tools, accessibility, we're imagining a user who is a dancer who does not have a high technical expertise, but wants to be able to experiment in this medium, in this form of practice. So the Mocap Streamer was developed at Goldsmiths, as I said, from 2020, and it's on version 3 or 4 now. But as a tool that should simply click and connect users without a high level of, expertise. Now, the joy of bringing this together with Otmo is that you can both capture movement, connect users, and then see animation instantly without necessarily having, or this is certainly the end goal, without having a technical specialist with you. And this has huge accessibility gains. We've also discussed environmental gains as well, as a mode of practice that can bring people together in spaces without traveling to each other. The most recent version of the Mocap Streamer, which was developed with paper-plane software, is open source on GitHub, and it uses a WebRTC protocol, which is basically like chat room or text. This is super simple. It's just a chat room user interface where users join as a sender or receiver. They determine which mocap system they're using, and as WebRTC, it gets around sort of institutional firewalls and all of these technical hitches that we've often faced in our practice, having ports opened and stuff like that. And people always ask about delay and latency, but we've never experienced any severe latency through this protocol. This is a research overview, very high level. It's about, is about inclusivity and accessibility, and certainly that was the focus of the British Academy, the explicit focus of the British Academy project that we did together. But really, we're looking at industry-specific virtual production tools for dance, connecting dancers. I always think that, in virtual spaces, dance is one of the best modes of expression because it's so embodied and, so sculptural in its quality that it really, people find it very tangible but it can also open up the practice of dance in different ways. So yeah, we always wanted this, as I said already, intuitive workflows, simple to use UIs, and obviously, in this current project, we're looking towards more stable, less experimental, more production-ready sets of tools for professional performance and for collaboration and co-creation.
Yeah, it's just worth making the point that there's obviously a lot of development in the area of virtual production, but it is these technologies have been primarily developed by and for the film industry. And so while they do present really exciting opportunities for people working in other performance practices in other areas of the creative industries, I think there is a growing need for more specific and relevant tools for different sectors. So that's something that we've been really focusing on, both with Otmo as a kind of foundational offline platform for people to get to grips with the basics of working with these tools within the dance industry, and then in Otmo Live as a tool that we can take into virtual production studios and into live performance settings. So yeah, moving on into the agenda of this particular research.
Yeah, the research agenda. I mean, this was just basically from the application, but we focused mainly on Otmo Live. That's already been mentioned. We've been locked in with the Perception Neuron mocap system for quite a long time. They were our project partner. They've been so great with support to us. But the system itself has certain problems as an inertial system with drift, with skeletons breaking. So we wanted to look at this as more of a professional tool in this, and we wanted to try and get something market ready that would be able to draw in different mocap systems. Of course, the golden goose, the final destination is to have this completely agnostic system where it doesn't matter where you are in the world or what mocap system you have, you can simply click and connect with anyone else with any other mocap technology.
A lot easier said than done.
As you'll see on the next slide. Obstacles, yes, of course. I mean, what we discovered once you pop the hood on these is that all of these mocap systems have developed in silos with sometimes frankly bizarre development strategies. They do not simply speak to each other. They have different programming languages, different axes, rotations. So each mocap system presents a unique problem with a custom solution. We face problems with the development environment. The licensing of motion capture software has moved very much towards a dongle-based system, which a physical dongle, which creates issues for remote development and collaboration. You can't shift licenses between machines. Often you need to have a physical dongle. So we were negotiating a lot of the time with different otherwise very expensive licenses, trying to haggle and try and get like short-term licenses or free licenses. So this was a little bit of a stumbling block for us. And then finally, we had to ask, this was discussed last week at South by Southwest London, is the market ready for these like remote collaboration tools? Actually, in terms of users, practitioners, access to mocap equipment, in terms of the devices themselves, including, XR devices, augmented reality and mixed reality devices that could be used in this, not quite ready yet or affordable. And certainly venues, you can have absolutely great work, but venues and funders aren't willing to take the risk on these things. So the whole ecology is not quite there yet for us to launch fully virtual remote collaborative tools, but it will be. It take a few years.
So shall I talk about this one, Dan?
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, so some of the results that we were able to achieve through this R&D is that the Mocap Streamer is now applicable to any character. It was originally bound to the particular character that was being sent by the mocap system, but now mocap coming in from the Mocap Streamer can be applied to any character in the Unity project. And that obviously frees up an awful lot in terms of our ability to use it in a range of different ways, and especially in these kind of performance settings. There's a whole kind of additional aesthetic layer that we can build on top of the underlying kind of technical elements of the streamer and the way it functions. And then that then integrates with Otmo's avatar functions, and we have steadily been iterating both within the offline version of Otmo to enable any sequence of motion capture to be rigged onto any character. That frees up an awful lot for people to be able to experiment with and see the effect and outcomes of different types of movement in relation to different character designs. But within the live version of the software, that there's a whole range of tools and techniques we've been developing for generating different kinds of effects through the layering and spatial and temporal offsets applied to multiple characters within a scene. And yeah, some of the kind of main research objectives or targets of this project were actually achieved quite early on. We had some really great success right at the beginning, and that helped us be able to showcase quite a lot of what we were intending to do over this project through the performances that we demoed at the Digital Body Festival, a festival that I launched in November last year, and then a few weeks after that at Beyond Conference. So this is just a short clip from what we showed at Beyond. You'll see two figures there. This is an example of some of the kind of formations and patterns that we can generate through Otmo Live by layering many characters over the top of each other, and extending them out into these different kind of pattern lines. You see Gabriel here, that he's at the Lowry at the venue in Beyond. And then what you don't see is the other performer, Eleni, who was in our studio here in London, streaming into the performance. But I'm going to skip on because I'm aware of time.
Yep. Well, I'm pretty much covered this, but this just gives more details, like realizing that Vicom's written in C, one programming language, OptiTrack in C++, requiring bridging languages, getting into the nitty-gritty of different rotational data formats of Euler angles or quaternions, different coordinate systems. These are the issues that we faced in trying to create a simple plug and play system that anyone would be able to use. This is all very back-end stuff, but kind of covered that already. So moving on.
So this is a short video we put together that demonstrates one advance that we made in linking two different inertial tracking systems together into the Mocap Streamer. So we've got Mocap coming in from the Xsense MVN Animate, and then another stream coming in from Perception Neurons Access Studio software that runs through Mocap Streamer into a Unity project. So you can see there the two kind of native avatars that come from those different systems. And then running through Otmo Live, there's a whole additional layer of kind of VFX effects and virtual production techniques that we're then applying as a layer on top of those two Mocap streams coming together. So it was using this system that we've been able to showcase performances, a few events recently, which I will explain a bit more about as we go on. But some of the other results we've achieved as being part of this development is thinking about other forms of media that we can run through the Mocap Streamer. One of the problems we've encountered in the past with the performances we put on is that we have the Mocap streaming through one channel. We're then having to stream audio and video through other channels. We've used Zoom in the past, but synchronizing and having consistent levels of quality of audio and video and mocap has proved challenging. So something that's now been built into the Mocap Streamer is the ability to send audio or OSC messages to trigger audio across multiple instances of the same project in different locations. And there are intentions to then build in video streaming into that as well. So everything could be running through the same channels and hopefully be really tightly coordinated. And then, yeah, another area that we've been developing is the ability to, through the Mocap Streamer, record and replay the mocap that's being streamed. So we have a working prototype of that as a system. The longer term intention is that can then be built into the Otmo app. So users of Otmo then have the ability to plug in their own mocap system, whatever that might be, and record, well, first of all, pre-visualize, but then record data directly into it rather than having to record in one piece of software, export the FBX, load it back in to Otmo. So making all of these processes as straightforward and as direct as possible. And then alongside that, alongside all of this research around different mocap systems, we have achieved a pretty major milestone with Otmo app, and that we now have a fully functional mocap import system. So this is just an example here of me using Move AI to very quickly take some movement. I performed here in the studio, download the FBX from Move AI's online platform, load it into Otmo, and then see it played back, first of all, on the kind of inbuilt character. And then there's an example here of that then being rigged onto a range of different imported characters. So that speed of being able to get movement from one's body into the app and then very quickly iterate on that has always been one of the major goals for us. So it's really exciting that we've achieved that. And yeah, there's growing support for a range of different mocap systems.
So a couple more slides and we'll round up. So yeah, just other little small gains that we can talk about more if people are interested in them. A developer mode, an offline mode for just like bringing, sometimes we realize you're not connecting with someone remotely and you just want to work with someone in the same room. So an offline mode was actually deployed in a performance recently. We've also developed various methodologies for incorporating more mocap systems towards a more open developer system that's more simply accessible and adaptable to different people's needs. And we've done some market research relating to Otmo and this remote collaboration capacity as one of the outputs. And a couple of recent shows, I guess the main one was last week, which is was on the 3rd of June. It's on the next slide, though we don't probably have time to play it right now, but it was in the Spitalfields Market, the Fashion District Festival. And yeah, Alexander can speak to the other ones.
Yeah, so we had a great opportunity in April to perform at an event that H&M, the clothing brand, put on in LA. And we were approached to use Otmo Live as part of the show visuals in a club space that they put on there. So that was a really exciting opportunity for us to take this virtual production tool that we've been we've been developing and prototyping and prove how effectively it can work on this really kind of large scale. So what you see in the image there is just one of many screens that were placed around the club space, and we were live mixing the visuals to the DJ sets that happened throughout the evening. And then we've got an opportunity coming up in early July at Jacob's Pillow Festival, which is the oldest and most prestigious dance festival in the United States. They're launching a new state-of-the-art venue, which has been built specifically around the idea of developing an art and technology performance program. So they've invited us to perform the Mocap Streamer performance as part of the launch of this new venue. So we'll have a dancer in the new smaller venue that they're building, and then a dancer in the older venue. They'll be linked together so that audiences in the two spaces can witness the live performance happening together in real time. So it's really exciting that there's a growing number of opportunities for us to be able to showcase the outcome of the research we've been carrying out over the last few years, but also progressively iterate on and improve the production values around the performance as well.
I think we should probably end there, actually. This is just a short clip, but
keep on.
Yeah, let's just end there. We can talk about future vision and Q&A.
Thank you very much. Yeah, that was great. You both managed, both projects managed to condense a lot of work, I know, into a very small period of time, but that was great. So now we've got some time for some questions from the audience, of which we have some, which is great. The first one that came in, and I suspect it's been partially answered, so I might, I only said with Karen's permission, but I'm not necessarily can get it in time. But so the question was around hardware, software, pipelines, workflows, and talent. And the question is, can the projects give insight into those category distinctions? I think you did some of the work around hardware, software, pipelines, and workflow. So I'm going to give you a slightly different question. Did you, so have you found like magic ways through that? So everyone that's involved in this kind of line of work is tethering together, and both projects demonstrate this, varieties of products, programming languages, repurposing technology that was perhaps envisioned for one purpose, that maybe not been a creative purpose for another. But what are your favorite ways through that really give you hope that there's like, you know, this direct relationship between performance and audience mediated through technology is going to be like, you know, really, really great. So I was going to say, Jamie and Naaman, would you have a go at that question first?
Sure. So I like your spin on the question. It's quite nice in terms of what we like the most out of the way. So what I liked was firstly that what we try to do is give agency to the performers directly, that they had control over how the haptics would work, but that's all driven through Wi-Fi and driven through different networks together. So I'll just explain a bit more of how the guitar works, because I spoke quite a lot about that in the project. So the guitar is linked directly up to Unreal Engine. It's got like a mixer, which then goes into like the PC, which is a very direct cable connection. That's nothing fancy in there. But then that connection drives through Unreal, is directly connected through a Wi-Fi router that then goes and sends TCP signals both to the Tesla suits and also sends signals directly to the haptic devices, and they all work very similarly. We are sending packets of information to each of them. There was a pipeline that we created out of that, which was particularly what was our emotional kind of what we want to give to the users emotionally. What was a question that we asked in every phase of the performance. So there were 3 different phases. The first phase was more looking at, here's a narrative performance that we have. This is what we want to generate, and this one will deliver to the audience. And then how do we do this with a full body Tesla suit, which is of course 68 electrodes, and then this 4 motor technology. So how do we translate that very well to both of them? And eventually we got some audience feedback that it did translate to them, and they tried both of them collectively. But do you want to add some more to that, Jamie? Would that be helpful?
I think yeah, like especially early on when we were starting to use test the Tesla suits and use performers, there were these questions around ethics, and you know, ultimately when these Tesla suits, they are kind of small electrical impulses that are translated across the body. So therefore, when you put a performer in them or an audience member in them, who's kind of controlling those electrical impulses and like how are they fed? So there was like, as well as agency, there was a lot of ethical questions around that. But I think what was really exciting was, yeah, in the different experiments we made, we were getting people were starting to understand what these haptic sensations did across the body and then became more involved in it because the motions they were making as audience members would translate to what was seen on the screen and to what the performers were feeling and vice versa. So yeah, they became more involved in what the performance was actually doing, and there was therefore that kind of ingrained trust in each other, whether that be the performer that already knows kind of what is happening because they've been using the suits, and to new people that are having these experiences. So there was lots of yeah, kind of ethical agency questions that we needed to kind of figure out what is the best way to navigate these while still making sure people are comfortable with doing this kind of new thing, which ultimately we didn't really fully come to the bottom of because these new questions will always come up. But I think that was one of the most exciting things where audiences were very willing to interact in that way. Yeah.
I think the biggest question that came up was, something that came up in the focus groups also a lot was the word puppeteering. That's what it felt like in many ways when you're sending haptic sensations to the users. It was almost like activating that part of the body and asking them to move in a certain way, which felt like puppeteering. But that's something we want to avoid. So I think I'll answer some more of this in the next questions as they are leading into a similar kind of phase.
Okay, well, and then yeah, Alex, what's the magic thread through all this technology? What's the bits that really excite you most about all this?
It's a good
The
question.
magic thread. Okay.
Sorry. That was to me, was it?
Yeah, it's to you, Alex.
Yeah. Sorry. Yeah. I mean, I think the thing that I always come back to with all of this is just making sure that the combined presence of these elements, the live performer and the virtual elements around them, have a justified place, that there's a clear and evident relationship between the two, and that they're ultimately elevating each other. That's often the challenge in working with technology, and because it takes such a long time just to get to a point of creative flow with the technology, that often it can be difficult then to really kind of work compositionally in the way that you might without that technology being present. But yeah, I think what's exciting about what we've been steadily developing over time is just not only building a tool that has a growing number of options for us to work within, so we can think about the kind of extended timelines of performance, because again, a lot of these technologies are built around kind of short time frames and demonstrations. Performance really works over much longer time frames. You need many more tricks up your sleeve if you want to build interesting kind of dramatic structures and changes over time. But then also in the staging as well, understanding more about what helps integrate these elements and what the different kinds of relationships that can be established between the live performer and their virtual counterpart. So I think we're always kind of coming back to that, yeah, exploring these questions in a range of different ways. But yeah, I think ultimately it comes down to the relationships and just ensuring that there's clear and meaningful relationships at work across all the elements, and for the audience as well to be able to understand the nature of those relationships, because it becomes more complex, especially when working in this kind of networked situation that we've been iterating on. For the audience, they need to first of all understand that there's a live performer in front of them, another live performer somewhere else, and then a virtual layer that is somehow uniting them. There are three-pronged kind of network of relationships that need to be understood, I guess, to justify the purpose of all of this. But then again, to give time for each element to be witnessed, understood, appreciated, and for the relationships to be seen between them takes crafting, and it's that's often the challenge, is getting beyond the kind of R&D and the technical development to that point of kind of artistic craft that comes after it.
Yeah, brilliant. Thank you very much. Okay, next question. So Catherine, for Jamie and Naman, so they're interested in kind of like the haptic relationships, I think, they're involved in there. So so there's performer to performer and their interactions, there's performer to audience, and Catherine's the question around with the audience active, I guess, in terms of like physically in the space, but also could they give feedback to the performers, or was that an element of the project that you were considering?
A bit of both, I suppose. Naman will definitely be able to explain the technological aspects a wee bit better than I will. But basically, so as he explained, there were 4 Tesla suits, 2 that were the performers were wearing, 2 that audiences were wearing at the same time, and so the kind of the third act or like experiment within the performance, they were kind of guided up by the performers into essentially the staging space, while the rest of the audience, whether they were using haptic devices or not, were then seeing them in the space, moving it around. Those Tesla suits, while being mocap, were then projecting avatars onto the screen, so that's they were physically interacting in the space with the performers and with the screen, and therefore what haptic sensations both they and other members of the audience were getting. But I suppose that's the thing with the alternative haptic devices that we would want to develop further. It's like, what are the different ways that we can do that? Naman, do you want to?
Yeah. What I really liked in the performance that took place was the way we played with the technology, the way the actors play with the technology more than us. But because they had the guitar, which I keep bringing back to, because the guitar was played by one of the performers. There was an entire 7-minute section that the performer went with, and based on what the performer would be playing, the other performer would react to that. Now that's the interaction between the 2 performers. But now, to bring this interaction with the haptics, because every time you play the guitar, there is something going on with the haptics, there's something going on with the screen, there's a lot of effects going on. There's almost like over sensory kind of approach of this. But when we play the guitar and the actors are doing some kind of action, the one who's not playing the guitar, there's 2 performers. So the other performer is doing some kind of action, it could be just pointing in the sky. The guitar would basically go with that and almost give sound effects for what's going on, and that would in turn give haptic effects. Now, the other performer who's not playing the guitar, he would go to the audience and he'd ask them to do some kind of actions with them. And that's where the audience and actor interaction kind of became quite interesting for us, where at some point when the audience would then be using their own arms to follow the other actor and point up in the sky in different ways, the guitar would then in turn give sound effects to that, and then in turn give haptic kind of effects to the same. So it was a very roundabout approach of giving the actors that agency and also giving the audience that kind of interaction and that kind of space to say that, yeah, we also were immersed because we interacted with the space, we interacted with the audience, we interacted with the haptics. So that was our overall like turnaround link to the way we went with this. But there was nothing stopping us technologically, because there's the other section, which is the last one, where it's motion capture alone, where based on the intensity of the motion, the haptics would then get intensified or get less intense, something in those lines. So at that time, those motion can also be done by the people wearing the Tesla suits. There's nothing stopping us from using that. But because of the time limitations that we had, we went with just one of the performers who's affecting everyone else and not the other way around, because there's this again this aspect of ethics that comes in, that you don't want someone to shock another person. So if I'm moving my arm all of a sudden and it's shocking the other audience members around it, because of that, they should know that that's taking place. So the actors and the performers in the space, they basically were guides to the other 2 people in the Tesla suits, the audience members in the Tesla suits, to tell them what is possible. And then eventually they came up on stage and then they did their own kind of little dance with the actors, and that became like a communal session for the 4 of them. But that did affect the haptics around. So yeah, that was our overall take on how the audience and actor interaction took place.
Brilliant. Thank you so much. We've run out of time. We didn't answer all the questions either, which is disappointing for, I guess, the people that asked the question, but lovely in the sense that there's lots of interest in this work. I think all four of you said you're more than happy for people to reach out. They've got questions and thoughts and all that good stuff. So thank you very much for that offer. And thank you very much for everybody that attended as well. I'm just going to quickly share my screen because we've got some parish notices before I say a final thanks. So there's two things coming up for your diary. First is the next seminar in the series, which will be on the 14th of July, 2 p.m, so same time, different date, different day. And that is exploring another aspect of XR, and specifically around exhibition and how and ways in which to use some of this real-time technology in exhibition contexts. And that's great. So we've got two projects there, one led by Teesside University, the other led by University of the Arts London. And although the Eventbrite's not up for that soon, we'll make sure that it's or it'll be on our website as soon as it's there, and it will be in the newsletter when that is the next newsletter comes out. And then the other thing is, so we've got that, so that's a virtual event. We've got a physical in-person event on the 16th of July. That's down in Bath at the University of Bath at the camera facility. And that's especially if you really enjoyed some of the themes around live performance that we've been exploring today. That's a really great event where you can explore some of that. And we'll be talking a little bit about the RSC project that's been based out of Camera and University of Bath that XR Network Plus have been supporting. Abertay's project will be there as well, exploring that in a little bit more detail as well, which is fantastic, and lots of other good stuff. So that's the parish notices. And then very finally, just a massive thank you. I have a partial view in of how much work all these projects, both these projects are involved, and it's a load. And it's fantastic to see them culminating and them in their final stages, and the collaborations that you're exploring carrying on. And just thank you so much for spending the time to, compress it down into like really short, bite-sized sharing for us all as the audience. So thank you very much. And thanks very much everyone for attending. Good questions. Hope to see you next time. Have a lovely day.